S.B.6. Chapter 5, Narada Muni cursed by Prajapati Daksha, 9, 10, and 11, 3 verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhu Kshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Bhu Kshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Bhu Kshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Anadi Nija Bandhanam Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Bhukshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Bhukshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Bhukshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Bhukshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Bhukshetram Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet Bhukshetram Nija Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet. What is this? Bhukshetram Jiva Samgyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet. Bhu, the earth. Kshetram, the field of activities. Jiva Samgyam, the designation of the spiritual living being, who is bound by different results of activity. Yat, which. Anadi, existing since time immemorial. Nija Bandhanam, causing his own bondage. Adrishtva, without seeing. Tasya, of this. Nirvanam, the cessation. Kim, what benefit? Asat karmabhi, with temporary fruitive activities. Bhavet, there can be. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. We'll go back to text 9 and read through. So, text 9. Kadam svapitura desham avidvamsho vipaschitaha anurupam avigyaya oho sargam karishyatha. This is Narad Muni speaking to the Haryashvas. Alas, your father is omniscient, but you do not know his actual order. Without knowing the actual purpose of your father, how will you create progeny? Text 10. Shri Shukavacha tannishamyata haryashva autpattika manishaya vacha kutam tude varshe swayam vimvam rishurdhiya. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, hearing these enigmatic words of Narad Muni, the Haryashvas considered them with their natural intelligence, without help from others. In today's translation, the Haryashvas understood the meaning of Narada's words as follows. The word bhu, the earth, refers to the field of activities. The material body, which is a result of the living being's actions, is his field of activities, and it gives him false designations. Since time immemorial, he has received various types of material bodies, which are the roots of bondage to the material world. If one foolishly engages in temporary fruitive activities and does not look toward the cessation of this bondage, what will be the benefit of his actions? Purport. Narada Muni spoke to the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, about 10 allegorical subjects: the king, the kingdom, the river, the house, the physical elements, and so forth. After considering these by themselves, the Haryashvas could understand that the living entity encaged in his body seeks happiness, but takes no interest in how to become free from his encagement. This is a very important verse, since all the living entities in the material world are very active, having obtained their particular types of bodies. A man works all day and night for sense gratification, and animals like hogs and dogs also work for sense gratification all day and night. Birds, beasts, and all other conditioned living entities engage in various activities without knowledge of the soul encaged within the body. Especially in the human form of body, one's duty is to act in such a way that he can release himself from his encagement. But without the instructions of Narada, or his representative in the disciplic succession, people blindly engage in bodily activities to enjoy Maya Sukha, flickering temporary happiness. They do not know how to become free from their material engagement. Rishabhadev therefore said that such activity is not at all good, since it engages the soul again and again in a body subjected to the threefold miseries of the material condition. The Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, could immediately understand the purport of Narada's instructions. Our Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for such enlightenment. We are trying to enlighten humanity so that people may come to the understanding that they should work hard in tapasya for self-realization and freedom from the continuous bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease in one body after another. Maya, however, is very strong. She is expert in putting impediments in the way of this understanding. Therefore, sometimes one comes to the Krishna consciousness movement, but again falls into the clutches of Maya, not understanding the importance of this movement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In text 8, which was covered yesterday, Narad Muni, having met the Haryashvas, is giving them some very mysterious spiritual instruction. In text 10, the word is used, enigmatic, unusual, hard to understand. He talks about the kingdom, talks about the earth, the kingdom where only one man lives, and the hole from which no one emerges, an unchaste woman who is dressed with attractive garments, the man who is her husband, a river flowing in both directions, a wonderful home made of 25 materials, a swan that vibrates various sounds, and an automatically revolving object made of sharp razors and thunderbolts. So there's a list of 10 different allegories that Narad Muni is using to preach to the Haryashvas. And from text 11 onwards, these will be explained one by one, all of them. So it's interesting to note that the Haryashvas were by themselves, and it says they understood the purport of Narad Muni's instructions by their own intelligence. So I presume they discussed among each other, and they came to conclusion what Narad Muni was referring to. So this is the benefit of being born in Satyuga, where their intelligence is so refined, and they're from such a high, noble family that simply by hearing these very mysterious words, they could understand Narad Muni's purpose. Whereas, we can imagine in our condition, Kali Yuga intelligence, if we had heard such a verse, we would have absolutely no idea what Narad Muni is trying to explain to us. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas have given us the purports to explain sometimes mysterious verses so we can understand the correct meaning. But the Haryashvas, they didn't need any further instruction. Simply hearing this one verse, basically one verse from Narad Muni. It wasn't like he was preaching to them for many days trying to convince them. He spoke this one verse, and then text 9, he's saying, how will you create progeny without knowing the actual purpose of your father? There's 2 verses. Maybe in 2 minutes it took him to speak these 2 verses, and that was enough for the Haryashvas to give up their material desires, to, in one sense, disobey the order of their father, and then to take to the path of pure devotional service. So therefore in Chaitanya Charitamrita it's stated that simply by a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all perfection. So this is literally 1 or 2 minutes. Narad Muni is preaching in 1 or 2 verses, and these, I think there are 10,000 of them, the Haryashvas, are fully convinced with their own intelligence. They understood these instructions and they will take them to heart. So Prabhupada talks in the purport how, just as Narad Muni is doing, the Krishna consciousness movement is also trying to enlighten humanity. And he speaks in the purport also about how the animals and the birds and beasts, hogs, dogs, they're working for sense gratification day and night. So one of Prabhupada's, one shloka he would often quote in this regard is from the Hitopadesh. Hitopadesh is a collection of, it's a Sanskrit work, which is like a secondary scripture, and it's a collection of stories about animals. We know children especially like to hear stories about animals. So there are very interesting morals behind all of the stories. Now, externally they seem just, funny stories, but each of the stories has a very deep meaning. So the history of this book is described that it's written by one Pandit named Vishnu Sharma. So Vishnu Sharma was a great sage, and he was living in the kingdom of Pataliputra, and the king there was named Sudarshan. So the king Sudarshan, one day he heard, kings are naturally supposed to be taking Brahminical association, so he heard some verses which awakened some feelings of regret in him. There are a couple of verses. One was that youth, power, influence, wealth, these things, even on their own, they can cause one to be bewildered. What to speak of if someone has all of them? And this point is also corroborated in Bhagavatam. Queen Kunti says, Janmaishvarya Shruta Shribir. These things are impediments in devotional service. So the king started to think that, my sons, the princes, they have all these things. They're young, powerful, handsome. They have all facility for sense gratification. All wealth is at their disposal. And they're becoming very troublesome. How will I train my sons to take over the kingdom and rule responsibly? And he kind of was very affected by thinking about this. The king's duty is to make sure that the citizens are taken care of and that the successor, the next king, the son of the prince, will be able to continue that noble tradition in the Vedic line. So he was realizing that his sons were not being trained properly. And he went into a long soliloquy of condemning what is the use of such a son, and many verses condemning this position of having very unfortunate children. The verse is actually very similar to a section in the Bhagavatam where Maharaj Anga, who was the father of Vena, he was lamenting how he's not able to train King Vena properly. And we'll recall from the 4th canto how King Vena was so cruel that just when he's playing with his friends of the same age, he would just kill them randomly. So merciless and so cruel, we can't even imagine. And despite Maharaj Anga's best efforts, chastisement, punishment, training, education, good association, he wasn't able to reform King Vena. And ultimately, Maharaj Anga, he simply left. One night, he simply left the palace in disgust and said, I can't do anything. I can't train my son. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to renounce, take sannyas. And that's what he did. So this king, Sudashara, was in a similar condition. He was lamenting very greatly that what will be of my successors? They're so avaricious. So the next day he called a meeting of all the Brahmins in his kingdom, and he beseeched them, is anyone among you who can train the princes nicely, because they're getting spoiled? And this is a very common thing. Generally, the sons of very rich, powerful men, sons of rich, powerful families, they very often get into trouble, become a very bad character, because they have all facility for sense gratification, and they didn't have to work for it, so they don't value it. So this is very common, even in the modern day we can see this. So in that assembly, this Brahmana Vishnu Sharma, he volunteered, said, yes, I'll train your children. And so he prepared all these stories. Naturally, these princes are not want to be trained in a regular way under discipline. So he simply told them stories of different animals. And in that way, he explained various moral and religious principles. So one of the verses from this scripture is often quoted by Srila Prabhupada, and it's very relevant to this subject. Ahara nidra bhayamaitunam cha samanam etat pashubhir naranam dharmohitesham adhiko vishesho dharmen hina pashubhis samana. So pretty much that is translated here in the purport. And this verse actually was spoken by the king when he was lamenting about his sons. This is one of the verses he spoke, that eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, these 4 activities are common both to the animals and to the humans. Dharmo hitesham adhiko vishesho. But dharma, dharma is translated in various ways. Sometimes it's translated as religion, and Prabhupada would generally translate dharma as the occupation of the soul, the constitutional position of the living entity. So dharma is the special characteristic that differentiates between the humans and the animals. Dharmena hina pashubhi samana. And if a person is devoid of dharma, and he's only engaged in these 4 activities, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, pashubhi samana, then he is equal to the animals. And this is what Prabhupada is referring to here. Birds, beasts, and all other conditioned living entities engage in various activities without knowledge of the soul, encaged within the body. And yesterday also, Atul Krishna quoted the verse from the 2nd canto, how the materialist spends his day earning very hard, earning money, and in the night he spends in sleeping or in sex indulgence. And so Prabhupada also is reiterating that here. So Prabhupada talks about hogs and dogs, and there's also another verse in the 2nd canto, which Prabhupada will often also quote in this connection, which lists 4 different animals. Anyone know which 4 animals we're referring to? Hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, or donkeys. Shvavid varaho shrakharai samstuta Shvavid varaho shrakharai samstuta pashubhi naraha. What is it? Pashubhi, I had it down. Nayat karna patopeto jatu namakadagrija. So the first line is the 4 animals. Shva, dog. Vid varaha, varaha we know is the boar, hog. Ushtra is camel, khara is ass. So the verse is saying that men who are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, they glorify people who never hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a kind of interesting structure of the verse. It doesn't say that they are never hear. It's not saying that they never hear about the glories of the Lord, but they glorify people who never hear the glories of the Lord. And in this connection, Prabhupada, when he would quote this verse, he would often talk about democracy and how the leaders are elected by vote of the populace, meaning the general people who are mostly Shudras, they're not trained, so they're mostly Shudras, hogs, dogs, camels, asses also, they elect a leader. And Prabhupada would say, who are they going to elect? They'll simply elect the biggest hog, the biggest dog, camel, or ass. So what is the use of such a democracy, a government where the rulers are simply there by vote of untrained people? Now, who will they vote for if they don't have education themselves? And then the purport to that verse, Prabhupada talks about each of the four animals and why they are mentioned. So the first is the dog, Shva. So dogs' characteristic, although generally dogs are considered kind of low-class creatures, but there is actually one very good quality of a dog that Prabhupada also touched upon. You know what that is? Loyalty. The dog is very loyal to the master, yes. So that's a good quality of the dog. And actually Chanakya Pandit, he lists some other qualities, good qualities of a dog. One is that the dog can lie down and sleep anywhere. And another is that at a little bit of noise, the dog will wake up. So this is especially very good for a brahmachari. You know, you lie down, fall asleep, and as soon as it's time to get up, you're awake and fresh. And also the dog is able to eat a lot of food, but they can be satisfied. They can survive on just a little bit. And loyalty is the one that Prabhupada touched upon. Also, dogs are very brave. You know, they can go and bark even at a big animal or at humans. So these are some good qualities of the dog. But in this context, the dog is being treated as a condemned animal, and Prabhupada would especially use the dog example to talk about people looking for a job. Now, when you, in the material world, one gets a mundane education, gets some qualification, then they have to go, probably would say, door to door, looking. Oh, my dear sir, please give me employment. Please let me serve you so I can get some paycheck and enjoy the benefits of that. And so many people are unemployed. They have to go door to door, writing out resumes, applying, and getting rejected. And so this is like a dog going from person to person looking for some scraps of food. In Mayapur, we have this experience. You know, the many stray dogs are there. But if a dog gets a good master, he gets a good employment, then he's very happy, very proud. So when someone gets some decent job, then they consider their life is now set. So this is the fallen condition of a dog. And human beings who act like that, they're compared to the dogs. Another way Prabhupada would use the dog is he had experience personally traveling around the world. And Prabhupada would say, you arrive at the airport and the immigration officers ask you, who are you? Why are you coming here? Where is your visa? How long are you staying? Rah, rah, rah. And Prabhupada would compare them to dogs. They're barking at us, you know, like we're some illegal, you know, immigrant trying to cross the border. You know, Prabhupada, he had a visa. He was a respectable sadhu. They're supposed to be welcomed, honored, worshipped when they arrive somewhere. Instead, the immigration officers will give them a hard time. Sometimes the customs also, they would, you know, be very rude or inconsiderate, not respecting Srila Prabhupada's position. So Prabhupada would compare them to the barking dogs. And of course, when Prabhupada would go on morning walks, many times he would actually experience the dogs are barking. Especially in LA, there are quite a few instances. He's walking along the, you know, fancy boulevards where the rich people live, and every house the dog is barking. Who are these people walking on the front? Who are they? Who are they? Actually, Prabhupada was even not allowed entry in Singapore. Particularly, he had planned he had reached Singapore. He had devotees there. They had programs lined up, advertised, but the immigration officials didn't allow him entry, and he was, you know, not exactly deported, but he was refused entry. So he had to immediately make arrangements to travel on. So a very offensive mentality, not knowing how to receive a pure devotee of the Lord. So this is the situation of the dog. Then the next one is the pig. So what are pigs famous for? What's a famous quality of a pig? Eats the stool. They live in very filthy conditions, and they eat very filthy, untouchable so-called food. In fact, they're so untouchable that even, you know, there are different religions like the Jews and Muslims, they will refuse to eat pork, refuse to eat pig meat. Even though they may eat everything else, but the pigs are considered haram. It means forbidden, untouchable, condemned. And as a side note, in Jaiva Dharma it's mentioned that this word haram, which means it's like a condemnation, but it's a namabhas, haram, like, oh Lord Ram. So there is some benefit for the people who use this word, namabhas. So for them, even for those people, the pig is considered dirty, low-class animal, not fit to be consumed, because they eat anything and everything. And often Prabhupada would say, if you give the pig halva, nice fresh steaming halva, they'd rather go for the fresh stool. And I actually really like to make this experiment. If we go to Vrindavan, get some halva and put it in front of the pig and see what they do. But the pig is condemned for eating anything and everything. And human being who has no discrimination in his eating habits, he will be forced to take the birth like a pig. Of course, we also have the instance of Lord Varaha, who is the supreme. Prabhupada wouldn't call him a pig, he would, a more respectable term, Lord Boar, Varahadev, who is very, very beautiful avatar of the Lord. It's described some places that the Lord appears in every species of life, Ajaya Manu Bahuda Vijayate, or at least in many, many different forms. We generally know of 10 incarnations, maybe 20, 30 we can get information of. But actually there are so many different incarnations of the Lord that we may not be aware of. So Lord Varaha is the supreme boar, most beautiful personality. So yes, so it's the dog, the hog, the camel. What is the camel famous for? Camel eats thorns. And I've actually seen this, maybe in North India somewhere. I've seen the camel on the side of the train tracks. They have these very thorny, dry trees, and the camels go and chew on them. So Prabhupada would describe that the camel's chewing the thorns, and he's so ignorant that he doesn't realize the flavor from the thorns is actually his own blood. His mouth is being cut, and he's tasting the blood and thinking it's very, very tasty dish, very tasty meal. So Prabhupada would describe this to the materialists who they work hard and then they engage in sex indulgence. And sex is, when the man discharges semen, the semen is like the most precious substance in the male body. It gives so many benefits, nourishment to the brain. And by wasting the semen, one's vitality, one's strength is reduced. So it's concentrated blood. So one's own life will be passed away as one loses semen like this. And one's whole energy will be diminished, and his intelligence, everything will be diminished. So there may be some temporary enjoyment in that, but actually one is simply wasting one's own energy in the same way that the camel is tasting its own blood. So the dog, the hog, the camel, and the last one is probably the most common one that Prabhupada talks about, the donkey, the ass. The donkey is famous for working hard. And Prabhupada especially would give the example. Nowadays, things are modernized. The washermen probably have rickshaws and even vehicles. But in the old times, the donkeys would be used by the washermen. There'd be a washerman in the village, and he would collect all the dirty laundry from the households, pile it up onto the back of the donkey, and then the donkey would walk to the river, and the washerman would wash the clothes, dry them, fold them up, bring them back in the evening. So the donkeys work also carrying, you see sometimes they carry bricks and other loads, they pull carts. So they engage very, very hard in carrying heavy, heavy loads on their back. And what is the reward for the donkey? Some grass. And he's very happy when the master feeds him some grass in the evening. But Prabhupada would say the donkey is so ignorant, he doesn't realize the grass is growing everywhere. As he's passing on the roadside, there's grass left, grass right. As he's waiting for the clothes to dry, there's grass all around. So he can just be independent. He can get grass from anywhere, but he's depending on the master to feed him some, chopped grass. So this is the condition of the living entity who thinks that he's dependent on someone else for his maintenance, whereas he'll get everything by his own karma. Or he can get the same things by working very minimally, just having a simple life in the village, growing a little food, and not having to work hard in factories day and night. So these are the four kinds of animals: the hog, dog, camels, and ass. So human life is not meant for such activities, as Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in this purport. So another point on the dog is that Prabhupada would sometimes say, like, we have these neck beads. These are our dog collars that just as the dogs who are taken care of, they have sometimes a name tag around their neck, even the name and address of the owners in case they get lost. So people see, oh, this dog is lost, let's see whose is it, and call them up, I found your dog. These things you don't really see in India, but in the West, people advertise lost dog reward. They put up posters and things, my dog is lost, please, and they put a photo of the dog to try and get it back. So Prabhupada would say, our neck beads are like our dog collar. We are servants of the spiritual master. And I reminded also of Sridhar Maharaj, in his last days here, he had a hat, Prabhupada's dog. So it's very nice meditation for a disciple to think, I'm always the humble servant of my spiritual master. So, in these moral stories that we hear about from the different animals, from the Hitopadesh, Panchatantra, there are also a couple of stories I wanted to share that deal with these animals, dogs and dogs and camels especially. So the camel story, the moral of this story is one should always be careful of one's association. So it's just a short story, how a camel, he was engaged as, just like the donkey, engaged in carrying heavy loads. And he belonged to a merchant. So there was a caravan of maybe 200 camels that were carrying different merchandise for the merchant. So this particular camel, he got injured in the journey and he wasn't able to continue. So the merchant couldn't wait for him to heal, so he just let the camel free. So the camel started roaming around the jungle. And so the other animals, they never seen such an animal before, a camel. So the lion, who was the king of the jungle, he sent his minister, the crow, to find out, who is this person, who is this guest of ours, come to our forest. So the camel introduced himself, I'm so-and-so, I'm a camel, I was injured, but, I'm quite happy now living in this forest, there's so much fresh food for me, I don't have to work hard. And the lion invited him, okay, you please welcome to join my circle. And the other ministers of the lion were a jackal and a panther. So all 5 animals were living happily together for some time. And then one day the lion attacked an elephant and he got injured. And he wasn't able to, he was badly hurt and he had to retire to recover, and he wasn't able to hunt. So the crow and the jackal and the panther were dependent on the lion for food. The lion would kill an animal and they would get the remnants, and that's how they were surviving. And when the lion wasn't able to hunt, then they started to starve. So they went to the camel, of course, he was eating grass happily as usual. So they went to the lion and said, sir, we're all starving, you're also starving, what's going to happen? So the lion said, you guys should go and find some food and try and hunt yourselves. But they weren't able to do that. So they came back and he said, okay, well, at least find an animal and drive it towards me, and then I'll do my best to kill it. And they weren't able to do that either. So then eventually they told the lion, we have this camel here with us. He's so fat and healthy and there's so much meat on him, and he's kind of an outsider. I think in this situation we should just kill the camel and eat the camel. And the lion said, no, he's our guest, What is this? You can never disrespect a guest like that. So, through all this dialogue, there's so many principles that are being taught, how to respect a guest. But as you can expect, the evil jackal and the crow and the panther got their way. Said, okay, what if he offers himself to you, out of love for you as his king? Then will you kill him? He said, well, okay, in that case, I guess it's, fair enough. Because the lion is also starving. They had to do something. So then the other animals made a plan. And all together they came to the lion and said, oh, dear king, we can't bear to see you suffering like this. It's our duty as your citizens to sacrifice ourselves for you. Please. And the crow said, please eat me. And the lion said, you're not even half a bite for me. I appreciate your sentiment, but it won't be any practical benefit. So then the jackal said, well, what about me? I can offer myself. And the lion said, you're a little bigger than the crow, but it's not really going to do much for my hunger. And the panther said, well, I'm big. You can eat me. And the lion quoted some principle that you're of the same species as I am, so it's forbidden to eat you. So the camel was saying all this and thinking, oh, I guess they're all so devoted to the king. And the king is so nice that he's not, taking up their offer. So I guess I should also do the same thing. So he said, my dear Lord, I'm big, I'm not of the same species, why don't you eat me? And they said, okay, and they all jumped on and devoured the camel immediately. So the principle to be learned is one, if one is keeping bad association, there's no guarantee of safety. And the other story was about the donkey. Similar, the donkey is working all day very hard, but at night he was allowed to roam free. The washerman gave him that freedom. So he would wander around here and there eating and making merry. So one day he met a jackal and they became friends. And the jackal said, come with me, I know a place you can get some really good food. So they went to one field and the donkey, quite strong, he was able to break the fence. And there was a cucumber patch. It was belonging to a farmer. So the donkey was eating the cucumbers very happily, and there was a chicken coop by the side, and the jackal went and ate some of the chickens. So after eating their fill, the two friends were, relaxing in the starlit night, and the moon was there, nice breeze. And donkey was feeling very, very happy. He said, my friend, you did such a good favor for me. I want to sing for you. I feel so happy. I feel like bursting out into song. And the jackal was like, I don't think that's a very good idea. You'll probably wake up the farmers and they'll come and beat us. And the donkey was offended. What do you mean? My singing is so beautiful. You just don't appreciate true music. And the jackal said, no, it's not that. I'm really concerned that, we could get in trouble. He said, no, you're just what do you know? I'm going to sing no matter what. And so the jackal said, okay, just let me go to the hole in the fence and I'll sit there and wait and you sing your heart out. So that's exactly what happened. The jackal started braying very loudly. And immediately the farmer and the watchman woke up and they understood there was some animals intruding in the field. They rushed there with their sticks and started beating the donkey almost to death. And he was, suffering so much. And after that, they tied some heavy weight around the donkey's neck as a lesson that he should, never come back. And he was able to kind of drag himself, bruised and beaten with this heavy weight on his neck. And the jackal was waiting for him at the gate and said, I'm sorry, I told you. You should have listened to good advice. So the moral from that story is that one should always listen to the advice of friends. So in this way, there are many lessons we can learn from the life of these different creatures. And Prabhupada is exhorting us here to not follow that animal-like propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, but to understand through the instructions of Narad Muni, through the instructions of our acharyas, how to rid oneself, as Prabhupada says here, release oneself from the material engagement. At the very end of the purport, Prabhupada, he's expressing some disappointment that some devotees come to Krishna consciousness, but then they again fall into the clutches of Maya, not understanding the importance of this movement. And Prabhupada actually would get quite disappointed when especially when devotees who he trained personally, who he knew well from the early days, would fall into Maya. And this was a very unfortunate situation. So we all know that Krishna consciousness movement, path of Krishna consciousness is very narrow. Sometimes it's described as a razor's edge. If you divert a little bit, you can get cut very easily. One of the main reasons of people falling from Krishna consciousness is offending other devotees. Offenses rekindle material desires, and then one loses one's taste for Krishna consciousness. So we have to be very careful to not fall into this category of someone who comes to Krishna consciousness but then falls again into the clutches of Maya. Final point which I wanted to make was not just falling into Maya, but sometimes we see in our practice of Krishna consciousness we kind of take things very easily and just kind of cruise in cruise mode for many, many years can pass by without really making an effort to go deep into Krishna consciousness and to make advancement. So that's another trick of Maya, to simply take things very, very lightly for granted. So I was thinking about this and how in some cases we get shaken out of our, Krishna's very kind, he shakes us out of our kind of mechanical process of, mechanical following of Krishna consciousness, especially when we come face to face with disease, old age, death. These things can become a very strong impetus for a devotee who is practicing kind of just routinely to take Krishna consciousness very seriously. And we see many devotees, when they get afflicted by, by impending death or by serious disease, and they realize, oh, now's the time I have to get serious. I should take my Krishna consciousness very seriously. Of course, there are some devotees who are always very fixed up, and in those instances, disease and death is not such a big distraction. I'm thinking of Manarupa Mataji. She passed away about a month ago, and really incredible way how she lived her life and how she passed away. And I don't think there was much difference in her level of consciousness, when she was healthy and active, as to when she was on her deathbed, because she was Krishna conscious in all conditions. But for many of us, it might take some harsh awakening or reminder, that life is temporary, material world is not a happy place. Krishna consciousness is the only remedy for us to really become serious in our Krishna consciousness and not fall into the clutches of Maya or fall into the clutches of lethargy. So I'd like to stop here unless there's any question or comment.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, as you told that devotees, they are not disturbed by disease. They are not disturbed by disease or death like that if they are sincere. But in Bhaktivinoda Thakur prayers, we see that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying to Lord that give me the good health so I can do devotional service nicely. So how you can take it?
The Prabhu was saying that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in some song, he's praying for good health so he can do service nicely. You sure? Okay. Because also there are other songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he's lamenting that now he's old and diseased and I'm attacked by 5 kinds of disease, I'm old, my life has been, uselessly passed by, I haven't been able to serve the Lord. So these pure devotees, they serve Krishna in any condition of life. Whether one is healthy, diseased, grihastha, brahmachari, those things don't actually affect one's Krishna consciousness if one is on that level. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, living as a grihastha with so many children, so many responsibilities, and he also had to face many oppositions. He was quite afflicted with bad health when that incident with the tantric, Vishikishen, he was attacked by some disease, by the power of that tantra, but he still maintained his Krishna consciousness. It's not that he was starting to blame Krishna, oh, I did so much service for you, why am I suffering like this? So it really doesn't matter. And many of his songs are like that, Grihe Tako, Bone Tako. It doesn't matter where you are, what condition of life. If one is really Krishna conscious, then he takes the best out of any situation. If he's healthy, he uses his full energy to actively push on Krishna consciousness. If he's unable to do that, he'll spend more time hearing, chanting, internal development of Krishna consciousness. So for a devotee like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that really makes no difference. For us, we may prefer to be healthy because we suffer, our consciousness will suffer if we're not able to come to the temple, not able to be active. But ultimately, Krishna will give us whatever is best for us. And we have to take that as his mercy and grow in whatever condition we find ourselves in.
Praying is, we should also pray to the Lord that give me good health. Is the part of devotions, pure devotional service also.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because I think it was yesterday they announced in the Mangalarti that so-and-so Prabhu has cancer and we should all pray to the deities for what? What are we actually praying for? It's an important point and we should reflect on that a little bit. Are we praying to get free of the disease? Is that, we like the materialists who go to the temple, my dear demigod, give me health, give me wealth, give me money. That's not really the mood of the devotee. The devotee will pray to the Lord, my Lord, if this is my karma, you're giving me this disease, giving me this difficulty, then I accept that. Please help me to learn from this experience. Please help me to still be fixed in your devotional service despite anything. So I don't think we find our acharyas praying in that way, that give me health, give me this, give me that. We want the Lord to do with us whatever he desires, and we act as his instrument in any case. So I'd be interested to actually see the reference from Bhaktivinoda Thakur and what exactly he's saying and what's the purport of that.
If devotees, their intention is to serve the Lord, if he is praying for anything, that is subordinate to devotional service.
Yeah.
In serving, that's devotional service.
Yeah, that's also a good point, because when Prabhupada was first had his health crisis, like in maybe it was 69, ISKCON was just beginning, 2-3 temples, maybe 50, 60, 100 devotees, and Prabhupada had a stroke in New York. And so he told the devotees to pray, to pray to the Lord. Oh, Krishna, my dear Lord, please, our spiritual master has not yet finished his work, so please let him remain longer. Because Prabhupada knew that if, at that point, when the devotees were so neophyte, he'd only had a couple of years training, if he exited, if he passed away, then ISKCON would not grow. They would probably just fizzle out. So in that condition, he told the devotees, you should pray that, there's still so much to be done. Krishna consciousness is not established. Let my good spiritual master stay longer. So that's a good, that's a particular instance that Prabhupada was encouraging devotees to pray like that. But we see in 77, devotees were praying like that. They wanted Prabhupada to stay, obviously, but Prabhupada himself was, whatever Krishna wants, it's in his hands. So for himself, he was fixed. Okay, thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi.